Greetings. This is General CJG here, coming to you with, well, the finale on the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy, the third book, Hard Merchandise. And joining me here is.
The one and only Django Fett.
Yep. And we're definitely going to end this one and finally conclude the Bounty Hunter Wars. So let's get on with the summary on our thoughts on the book. So, Django, go ahead.
Okay, so initial thoughts. I was very much looking forward to this book, and it didn't fail. I enjoyed my time throughout this entire entry, and as a trilogy as a whole, I really enjoyed it. And this one did not disappoint whatsoever, and it has a very satisfying finale.
I agree. It is definitely a damn solid finale. And there were a few things that I didn't expect, which we'll get to soon, of course. So, yeah. What else did you think, Django?
Well, I think we can discuss the thoughts and the things that happen in the story, and then we can get on with that for sure.
Alrighty, so let's begin. So, Django, how did this book start?
Okay, so we first start off with not Boba, but Zuckuss and Forlom as they capture a bounty for the Empire, which is a news rumor seeking human smuggler named Dramas Smada. I'm terrible with these alien names. That profits from using this info, and they did so by managing to smuggle a blaster power cell into a bar that has a very strict policy on working blasters and weapons.
Yeah, so if you manage to somehow smuggle the blaster in there, usually the power cell is like somehow wiped out because of the safety measures put into the bar. But Suckers and Forlom, they managed to do it by basically Suckers giving some sort of material to Forlom, and he managed to literally create a power cell inside him. And Suckers put the power cell in his blaster, and they were able to take Drummer's Mada alive. Oh, and also the bar manager, he pretty much, well, he was pissed and he prohibited Suckers and Forlom from ever returning to the bar for breaking the no blasters rule. So yeah, that happened. That was interesting. So yeah, what do you think of that part, Django?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is I don't remember if this was like the first time we've seen Forlum now, but first being introduced into this. But it's great seeing like pretty much every single bounty hunter from the iconic scene from The Empire Strikes Back into this trilogy as a whole. Like whether they have a tiny appearance or a big appearance, it's just great to see them all there for me.
Mm-hmm. So, yep, it was awesome indeed. And then we cut back to Bosk, who's on Tatooine. He's basically trying to lay low, not attract attention, but seems that his presence on Tatooine is not necessarily that low profile. It seems that everybody knows that he's there, and everyone knows what happened to the Bounty Hunters Guild, and that Bosk is no longer the big bounty hunter he used to be because of Boba Fett. So, yeah, his reputation is not that good right now. Oh boy. Yeah. Django, did you ever thought that Bosk's reputation would be down the shitter?
Yeah, who would have thought? I mean, you would think that Bosk would still be, the top bounty hunter, but Boba just outclasses everyone pretty much. As you see in this trilogy and other entries, this one just shows he's not even close.
Yep. And Fei Amel Mingxin, he was talking to Bosk in his private booth on the Mos Eisley Cantina and offered Bosk to get Boba Fett's current location. Interesting. So, yeah. And now we finally got back to Boba Fett and his crew. With Nila, well, what do you think it happened to Django?
He's trying to do some trickery around Boba, and yeah, of course, Boba sees right through that instantly. So,
Yep, didn't
yeah.
work. So, yep. And she defeated, she was like, okay, Dengar, just tell me the end of the story at this point. And so now we cut back to the Bounty Hunter Wars. So the jungle, take it away with the flashback.
Okay, so This I remember pretty vividly. So in this flashback, this is the last entry that Dengar remembers of Boba during the past centuries. So Boba Fett is on his way to Gharmabad to deliver Trin Vasant and collect the bounty. Now, Vasant was trying to get Fett to make a deal with him in order to avoid getting killed by the party Vasant was talking about, which Fett didn't accept. Little did he know that Vasant wasn't bluffing about Fett going to get killed, as Slave One was getting blasted by Zizor's ship, the Vendetta. So as soon as he came out of hyperspace, he was attacked right away by Zizor's ship, the Vendetta.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Indeed. It makes you wonder what Bosk was saying back in the second book at the end. If you remember that, when Bosk was
mhm.
like questioning Fed, was like telling Fed about how Prince Caesar was involved in the entire conspiracy and everything, and Fed didn't know what the hell he was talking about. Yeah, hell, he didn't even bat an eye on it until now.
Yeah, he was. That was like the one time that I've seen Boba just actually pretty flabbergasted and didn't know how to. He just kind of just glossed over it completely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, well, Slave One was damaged. So, what did Boba do to survive?
So he was trying to preserve oxygen to find some way to fly. But during all this chaos that's happening, Vasant was trying to take advantage of the situation and trying to kill Fett, but failed to do so as Fett defended himself and managed to choke the crap out of Vasant. But he's still alive, he's not dead. But Slave One managed to be okay during the chaos, and they go into the layer of Gharmabad, which is the ghostly nest.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, Boba somehow managed to pull it off and literally land the Slave One on Kudar Mubat's web, which that's some dedication. So, yeah. And so, in Kudar Mubat's web, now here's some eye openers. So, the Django, shall you be the one to reveal these eye openers?
Yes. Okay. So, once Fett was there, ready to deliver Vasant, he actually encountered Zizor, who was actually firing at him, and he actually managed to grab Zizor, and you know, through some talks and stuff, Zizor managed to give out his ploy on what was occurring with Boba and the bounty hunter guild, and that the entire bounty hunter wars and then the bounty on Vasant was a ploy made by Zizor to destroy the bounty hunter guild from the beginning. And Zizor was eventually going to kill Fett until Balance Sheet came in and persuaded Zizor to not to do it and instead keep him alive for further use of Fett. But the whole point of just this whole thing was just destroy it as a competition for the Black Sun, and just so as Black Sun doesn't have any competitors, and it could still be this under Empire.
Yep.
And Boba was a puppet throughout this whole thing.
I'm surprised Fett didn't went to get any sort of vengeance against Shisor all the time. Now I think about it.
That is right. Yeah, that never did happen.
Though I think maybe there is a reason for it, which we'll get to later on, and it involves Black Sun itself. So there's that. And finally, well, what happened in that flashback, the Django, at the end?
So, Zizor was actually talking to Gharmabot too, and he told him that, you know what, I have my own replacement too, as you're kind of useless at this point. So also we didn't mention this before. I forgot to mention this, but when Boba managed to land on the web, he actually destroyed most of the web and severely damaged Gharmabot in the process. So Gharmabot is pretty much just inches away from death. So Gharmabot looks like he's just almost dead at this point, and Caesar tells him that he's going to be replaced by Balance Sheet, who is actually just not linked to the web to Gharmabot, and it's a separate entity, and it also an intelligent being as well. So basically, is just left to die on the Ghostling nest, and Balance Sheet gets offered a ship by Zizor to keep their business going on, and Fett got paid for Vasant's bounty. However, he got paid half of the pay as balance sheet used half of those funds to have his web of contracts and businesses kicking off, which is something you don't cross with Boba Fett. He needs to get paid the full amount, and that's not cool in his book at all. But since his ship is pretty much damaged to Boba Fett's ship, he had to let this one slide for now, as he was in no position to seek revenge on balance sheet. We might see something in the future, but we'll leave it off for later.
Yep, that happened. So yeah, the jungle. What do you think of the whole flashback, the end?
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit. And even you would think Boba would kind of see through this whole thing and know it was kind of a ploy, but even he was kind of just. I mean, even from the beginning, like infiltrating the Bounty Hunters Guild and doing that is kind of like that's super shady. Even as a bounty hunter, that's not something that I would do initially. Because usually, just bounties is just like, oh, just kill this person and bring his head, or bring this person back, or it's not like this like a mercenary in a way or an assassin, but this is kind of going into a different direction, and he just keeps on going and going, and then eventually he gets that bounty and thinks he's going to get some more money from that point on, and it was all just a ploy. And I liked how Fett was even a match for Zizor, and he didn't Zizor didn't even know what to do at that point too. I mean, he was talking, of course, and he's a very intelligent person, but it's just like he knows his limits as well, and he knows not to cross Fett.
Yep, indeed. This is one of the few times that I've seen Fed being used as a puppet. Now I think about it, rarely have I seen that. Have you seen like?
That's I know the Empire uses him, but not in this way at all.
Hmm. So this is definitely one of the first times that I've seen Fed actually used as some sort of a puppet of sorts, with him not even knowing it.
Yeah, and of course, there's people who cross him, and they would end up dead, and they would try to betray him and stuff like that. But it's not like to this level of intelligence and resources that are associated with that.
Hmm. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and Kudar Mubat, well, he left to die. Boba Fett got only half his pay. Balance sheet got a ship. So I guess some won, some didn't. Some were left in the middle. So I guess there's that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Now back to the hounds too. Well, the jungle. Would you like to tell the audience what was his destination all along?
So the Hound's Tooth, where Boba is commandeering, and Boba and his crew, they're traveling to the remains of Gudarmabot's ghostling nest web, and Fett had to do several maneuvers and take specific hyperspace routes in order to avoid detection from unwanted attention. And he managed to keep Neela at bay by making Dengar tell her the whole entire story of the Bounty Hunter Wars, so she could not only pass time during the hyperspace, but also for her to be ready for what's incoming.
Yeah, so apparently Dengar along was tasked by Boba to tell Neela the entire Bounty Hunter War story,
Yep.
which is interesting. So, yep, apparently all along, Kudar Mubat's ghosting nest was the location. Who would have thought? Especially since it took a while to get there. Yep, and why did we go there? Well, Boba Fett starts to tell Dengar and Neela everything about what happened. So, the Django, do you wanna tell the audience what is it that Boba's now telling? Because after 3 books, this is the one time where he finally tells his plan and what's gonna happen. So,
Yep. Let's do this. Okay. So after that flashback, we then go to the present, and of course we go to Hound's Tooth. But also, the Neela and Den they go up to Boba, and Boba heard the entire thing. Of course, he has comms and stuff, so he could hear the whole thing. But then he tells Dengar and Neela of another story. So he tells the final story, and that a while back he found a ex bounty hunter named Reduptum dead in a ship floating in space. He searched the ship and found a cargo droid that had exact same recording and evidence of Luke's homestead in flames with Zizor's pheromones in it. That same little droid that Boss found inside the Slave One ship not too long ago. And not only did Fett find that droid, but he also found a nearly dead woman unconscious in that ship, and that woman being Neela. He couldn't get any info or name on her because of her memory wipe that they did on her because she was put onto Reductum's custody. But Fett in the end put Neela into Jabba's palace so he could see if someone would recognize Neela and Fett would profit from that. And he also kept a close eye on her to make sure she didn't die in Jabba's palace.
Mm-hmm. That was why Nila all this time had some sort of sensation that she and Fate were connected in some way. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, yep. And why is Fett telling them this, the Django?
So, Boba Fett and his partners were tasked in reviving Kudarmabot in order to figure out Neela's past self and why she was being kept by Reduptum. So, to accomplish this, they had to reassemble and repair the Ghostling nest. So, Boba and Dengar were doing that while Neela stayed in the Houndstooth cockpit, supervising that the ship's systems were properly giving energy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, that was the plan all along. And until now, we finally hear it from Fett's mouth. So, yep. That's the plan, and that's what they're doing. So, yep. And meanwhile, that's happening. Well, Neela was in the cockpit. She decided, might as well just take a look at some info that's stored in here. And, well, she managed to hack into Fett's personal data logs stored in there. And she found some rather interesting info. What type of info did she find, Django?
So she found some personal data logs and found Neil Pasandum and what his final status was, as well as the old symbol of Kuat Drive Yards, one symbol that made Neela finally fully remember who she was.
Yep. Now she knows that she was Katil of Coolbelt. Mm-hmm. She remembered her name, where she comes from, everything. The only thing missing was why she got the memory wipe and into the ship, which we'll get to in a bit later. So, yep. And then what happened to Django?
So Fett and Dengar managed to bring Gudarmabot alive to get answers for him from Neil Pasandum, except that because Ghostling Nest was not fully reconstructed, Gudarmabot could not remember who the one responsible for hiring Reduptum was. So pretty much all for nothing. And, but another ship started attacking the nest, destroying it, and forcing Fett and Dengar to go back to the Houndstooth. And Neela managed to drive the ship and rescue both of them.
Mm-hmm. And what ship was attacking them?
That was Balance Sheet's ship.
Mm-hmm. That same ship that he got from Shisor years ago. Mm-hmm. And, well, Fed decided to discuss and comments with Balance Sheet what hell's going on, and they established a meeting in person. So, yep. And so, the Django, what did Balance Sheet discuss with the crew?
So he wanted to come to an agreement with Fett, but he revealed to Fett and the others that the man behind the bombing run on Tatooine and the party interested in the fabricated evidence of Zizor destroying Luke's homestead was Kuat of Kuat. To
Mm.
get the evidence, Fett and the others had to return to Tatooine and retrieve it from Bosk. However, Fett will have to leave Houndstooth behind and go to another ship to Tatooine to avoid being impeded and captured. So Balance Sheet hired Sulak to escort them there.
Mm-hmm. The same Shulak that had Off Fortuna in his ship from Book 2, if you remember. Mm-hmm. The same one that could have almost killed Boba Fett, except that he didn't, because Boba Fett. So, yep. This is an interesting one. And of course, Fett went with Shulak to Tatooine. He had a small run in with Oz 10, currently the best well known bounty hunter in the galaxy, at least for those that believe Fett is dead. But Fed managed to deal with him and managed to get to Bosk to get the evidence. But something interesting happened. Something you wouldn't see Fed do when he goes against Bosk. And what was that, Django?
Yeah, he actually paid Bosk credits he asked to sell the evidence. He paid him credits.
Even Bosk was like, "What? What? You're pulling my leg." Oh my god. Yeah, that's a new one. But yeah, because Fed was in a hurry and everything, and he just got the evidence and went. So, yep. And meanwhile, Dengar and Neela are drifting in space close to the Oranisan system, eluding the Quad Drive Your ship that's currently chasing them. So, Boba Fett arrives with Shulak and links with Dengar and Neela. But Shulak, well, unfortunately, he left them there on Houndstooth because the ship was going to get intercepted by Kodir of Kulbolt's cruiser. And Kodir, she took the evidence of Fed got, and she also took Neela and left. And Fed was determined to restore functionality to the Houndstooth by removing the Quad Drive Yard's sabotage unit that was tucked inside Boss' ship in order to follow Kodir to Quad. Yep, pretty much set up to the final parts of the book. So before we get to that, Django, what do you think so far of the book?
Oh, it's great. I just love the intrigue and deception that occurs throughout and all these twists and turns that occur in these books. It just every time, like I keep getting engaged over and over, and I can't get enough of this. Like I want to hear more of what next.
Yeah, indeed, definitely. And what do you think about the specific parts of the events in the book? Like, for example, how they had to revive Kadar Mubat to get info. Like, that's some hardcore stuff right there.
Yeah, I mean, like he's a robot spider, pretty much. So they wanted to revive him in some way to get something out of him. But unfortunately, something in his system just prevented him from getting that memory from him. But that was actually a pretty cool turn that they actually went back to like right before, in the flashback, which they just mentioned like right before this passage. And yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And what do you think of how apparently how Neela managed to meet Boba Fett? Like the fact that Boba Fett rescued her from Reed Upton's ship. Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, Boba knew there was something going on with her, and despite the mind wipe, he wanted just to hold on to her for now and just keep her safe, even though it's like probably the worst place to keep someone safe, like a girl like her safe in Jabba's palace. But I mean, he kept a watch. I mean, and she's still alive, so there's that. But it's just like he knew the importance of this woman and knew that she would become important later on. He just didn't know who she was connected to and who she belonged to exactly, but he knew in some way that this girl is important. I'm going to find a way to profit from this too.
Yep, indeed. So that definitely was interesting to see, and not something you usually see because I don't remember another time that Boa did this, as in rescue somebody from a bounty hunter ship, somebody unconscious. Yeah, because that was probably one of those few times that I maybe not some compassion in Fed, but also trying to profit from it. Because yeah, I don't remember the last time he did something like this. Not even after this book, if I recall. So no idea on that.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not really sure. I don't think it's really out of compassion. I think it's just mostly out of profit more than anything.
Yeah, agreed. Indeed. And okay, Bosk and Boba in the cantina, and Boba paying Boss the credits. Like, what do you think of that? Like all that.
I thought that would be a moment like much akin to A New Hope, where it's kind of like of course, I didn't think Bosk would die, but it would be like a Han Solo and Greedo. and they would probably like shoot each other at the at the cantina or something like that in some way. But surprisingly, Boba Fett. I mean, I thought in some way he would trade Houndstooth and try to get his ship back or something. But no, I just managed to just give him money, and that was it.
Not something you'll ever see Fett do. So,
Yeah, he said something too that I think he said like yeah, use it wisely or use it now because he knew that some way like Boss was kind of marked in some way, if I remember.
yeah. With, so yeah, it was interesting. Interesting indeed. Uh-huh. And all right, so now we get to. Shall we get the Django to the finale of the book, the final part?
Oh yes, yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. Okay, so while Caldier's cruiser was on the way to Kuat, she was talking to Nila, Katil of Kulbut, about what's to come, and that is her ongoing operation with the Rebel Alliance. She planned to persuade the Alliance using the fabricated evidence to usurp Kuat of Kuat and take control of Kuat Drive Yards, and the Alliance had blindly agreed to do so. Yep, it seems that Codier had some other plans behind her sleeve than originally thought so in the second book. Ooh, this is getting interesting.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And meanwhile, Katil, she had a private talk with Codier, figuring out everything about her past and finding out that it was Katil's own sister, Codier, who, surprise, she was the one that ordered Redupton to have Katil's memory wiped and be taken out of the picture so Katil would not warn Kuat of Kuat from Codier's ambitious goal to usurp him. Mm-hmm. Yep. It was her sister all along. Dun dun dun. So much for family bonds. So, yep.
Yeah, initially I thought it would be Kuat of Kuat, but it ended up being the sister. And I think was it Kuat of Kuat who used the wanted the droid, that like that droid's head and stuff, the fabricated evidence, or was that Katil?
So, apparently, Redupton was doing two jobs.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
two jobs. Quad of Quad tasked him to have the fabricated evidence in the cargo droid. So that was Quad, but Katil was Codir. The man was doing two jobs at the same time. And that's why Boba Fett managed to find both the cargo droid and Katil in the ship. Yep, that's how it happened. Both of them had tasks that reduped on to two different tasks, and both fell in the hands of Fett at the end. Yeah, I guess you could call that maybe luck, destiny, coincidence. I don't know. So
It's a pretty
sometimes,
big coincidence.
yeah, indeed. So, oh, and then what happened to Django after Katil and Kodir were talking? What did Kodir decide to do?
She was ready to kill her sister right then and there. She took out a blaster and was ready to shoot at Katil, except Katil actually ended up being very fast to catch Kadir off guard, take her blaster, and hold her hostage. All thanks to her time being with Boba Fett and Dengar, and I think before that time, I think her training as well, because her sister was also pretty apt at combat as well.
Both were, but it seems
Yeah,
that when you are with Boba Fett and Dengar, well,
big difference.
yeah. So there is that. So yeah, and Katil definitely was holding hostage her sister. So yeah. Meanwhile, what was happening with Kuat of Kuat?
So Kuat of Kuat actually found out what Kodir was doing, and was kind of pissed off, just a little bit. Um, so we ended up sabotaging the repair docks of the Imperial Star Destroyers to be destroyed if someone tried to steal the cruisers from him, and started explosions everywhere throughout because he was pretty pissed off with the whole thing that the rebels were going to do all this and stuff like that. And for Kodir for doing this as well. So he wanted just to burn everything. So everything was being exploded while he stayed in the giant big Star Destroyer to die peacefully. But Vet showed up, demanding to know the truth from Kuat of Kuat about Redubdum, Neela, and more. And it turns out Fenold hired Redubdum into doing two jobs simultaneously, like we mentioned before, helping Kuat have the fabricated evidence being made, and Kudir having Neela being taken away and having her memory wiped. He was working for both in order to get two favors done and make himself richer.
Yep, that is what happened. And we finally got the whole truth, everything, and well, what do you think, Django?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot, and Kuat of Kuat was. I mean, there's like so many villains in this. There's not like just like this head villain that's in charge of everything. It's like it's a little bit of everyone, pretty much. And also, Kuat of Kuat actually ends up instead of Boba killing him, Kuat of Kuat actually ends up just ejecting himself out from an airlock and dying out from there.
Lol. I thought he was like stuck in a hallway or something, and one of the explosions caught him. I didn't read that part well, but good to know that it was an airlock. So,
Yeah, so he died his own way in the end.
yep. And then,
So, Fett left Dengar to search for Kuat. Dengar tried to drive the Houndstooth away from the explosions, but was almost unable to survive as the Houndstooth got damaged by them, until Manaru, Dengar's lover, intercepted him and rescued him.
mhm, that is one hell of a coincidence.
Another coincidence.
A damn big one, especially considering how much Dengar was like wishing to see Manaru.
Yeah.
So, yep, indeed. And then Fett drove the entire Imperial Star Destroyer away from the docks, and that somehow made it so that the entire station would no longer explode because the explosives were linked to the main Imperial Star Destroyer that Kuat was. Yeah, that too.
Oh.
Yep. So he drove the freaking cruiser and managed to disable the rest of the explosions. That's how Quad Drive Yards was not completely destroyed as much as Quad wanted it to be destroyed. So Fed saved the station, which is insane. So yep, that happened. And now what happened in the end, Django?
Okay, so Fett had one last talk with Katil in order to get from her the fabricated evidence so he could give it to the Black Sun Usurper faction to get them off Fett's back. And I think in that explosion too, he wanted to make himself look like he's dead as well. At the same time, I think. Um, so another thing to just to get Black Sun off his back, because that's as a bounty hunter. I mean, you deal with different groups and stuff like that, but Black Sun is like a whole under Empire and force you don't want to deal with. I mean, even the Empire and Rebellion, you don't want to mess with these big factions as well. But Black Sun's a whole another category. So Katil also got some plans of her own, though she's wondering if she will take over Kuat Drive Yards or do something else. But one thing was sure, she did learn a lot from her time with Boba Fett and would use that experience for her future endeavors with Kuat Drive Yards.
Yep. And this is why I mentioned before why Fed didn't get any sort of revenge on Shisor, because he was the one in charge of Black Sun. And if you cross Black Sun, good luck being alive. So, yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're the Emperor or even Darth Vader, yeah, good luck dealing with Black Sun. So, there's that indeed. And at the end, well, what's the end, Django? The final.
So this one, the final, Dengar and Minaru were discussing how Minaru had made a bet with Draumus Shada that if Dengar managed to survive his partnership with Fett, she would earn a lot of credits. And earn them she did. So they were now able to pay all their debts and live a happy life together. So in the end, it was a happy ending.
Yep. Dengar finally, he got something out of his partnership with Fed, though not in the way he expected. So,
Yeah.
that happened. And yep, that's the end of the story. So, what do you think, Django?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, this is just rounds up just a fantastic trilogy that I can't think of anything wrong with it, really. Like I can't think of really any problems. Oh, I will say that, not getting that satisfying thing with balance sheet, like taking him out or anything like that was kind of disappointing. That was the only thing, really. Because balance sheet is not mentioned after he tells Boba like, "Hey, Kuata is doing everything and stuff like that." But other than that, that's really it. That's the last time we hear of balance sheet. That's the only thing. And I will also say another thing is they do mention quite a lot in the present time, where they mentioned that in the Return, this is the events of Return of the Jedi. So they're constantly saying that, especially Boba, who's saying that yeah, the in the battle of for the Endor, the Battle of Endor is going to be happening. That that the rebellion is going to lose, and then the Empire is going to win. And if they're also saying that if the Empire wins, it's actually a bad thing, and if the rebellion wins, I mean, they see no way that the rebellion could win at all, but that it actually would be better for them. So that was actually kind of a surprising thing for Boba of all people to say that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Oh, speaking of that, at the end, Monaro also mentioned that news were broadcasted that the rebellion won the battle. Yep.
Yep.
So, apparently, the book ended right as Return of the Jedi ended. There you go.
hmm
So, yep, that was also interesting to see. And my thoughts on the book, well, great read. Definitely a worthwhile conclusion to this trilogy. Didn't disappoint. It definitely took it in some directions I didn't expect. And yeah, it was all around a great read. And it was indeed excellent. And with that in mind, so anything else to mention, the Django, on this?
No.
Okay, then I guess one last thing to do, and is, of course, the EU connections. So, now, compared to the other two books, unfortunately, this one uses a lot of elements from the previous books, two books, so that means that there's not going to be much here in terms of new elements. However, there's still some new ones, so I'll mention them here, but the image on the screen will not have that much changes. Maybe one or two, but not that many changes. So with that in mind, so let's get into the Uconnect. So Django, do you got any, or shall I say them?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so most of these are from the essential guides because a good chunk of characters and some other elements literally are just in hard merchandise and only in guides like the Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia or the Essential Guide to Warfare or the Reader's Companion. Like, there's not many. So, for example, Gennard Rose Densent, a male member of the Rebel Alliance. So, to put it simply, he just shows up in hard merchandise and in the Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia. So, there isn't much. And the singles for Scavenger Squadron from the Alliance, like, they're just there. And Reed Dupton, he shows up in the Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia, but also in the official Star Wars Fact File 46. Then we have Oz 10, who just shows up in hard merchandise, possibly in some essential guides, but who knows. And okay, here is one that definitely is more referenced: the bombing of the Quad shipyards, aka the end. That had an indirect mention in Legacy of the Force Sacrifice, and it is definitely mentioned in New Essential Chronology, Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia, Essential Atlas, Reader's Companion. So there's that. The Osmani system in hard merchandise, but also in the Essential Atlas, and there's several others from the Essential Atlas actually. So then there's the the Sala Chiron's Cantina, but hard merchandise only. So not much. So yeah, just only the Osmani system in the Central Atlas. Oran U in the, which is basically the largest planet in the Oranessa system in Essential Reader's Companion, and the Oranessa system that's in the Essential Atlas, and Vendetta, aka Shisor's personal flagship, appears in the new Central Galactic characters and in Aura Sync Dawn of the Bounty Hunters. Yep. And the transfer ship, also known as the data transfer chip, to transfer credits between different accounts, kind of like, I guess, one of those credit card terminals of sorts. So it appears here, but also appears in the MMO Star Wars The Old Republic. And balance sheet is here. And surprisingly, he does not show up in the Bounty Hunter files, despite Kudar Mubat and the Ghostling has been there. He does show up in the Essential Guide to Characters, Star Wars Fact File 25, Kyle Katarn Steel Mission 4 on Wizards.com, Complete Star Wars Encyclopedia and Essential Guide to Warfare, and in Kudar Mubat's databank. But no Bounty Hunter files for some reason. Weird. And the Mingxin, a species of rodent face sentience, basically humanoids with faces of mouse. So yeah, hard merchandise complete Star Wars Encyclopedia. Like, and that's all I could find because there really aren't that many here that literally are like that, like any new elements that this book introduces, they're like very minor, or they just show up in essential guides. They don't show up in any other EU media aside from the guides compared to the other two books. So, and this book also uses plenty of other EU elements from the previous books. So there isn't really much here that we can say other than the more obvious ones. So yeah, we don't really have much in terms of EU connections here. There's probably a few, but there's not that much. So yeah. Do you got any you want to bring to Django, or shall we go on to the conclusion now?
We can go with the conclusion.
Okay, conclusion now. So go ahead, Django.
All right. So this comes as a super high recommendation from me. It's not the greatest trilogy of all time, not by any means, but it's a great trilogy that for Legends and non-Legends fans, if you want to get into Legends, this is comes as a high recommendation, as it's not something that you have to read like any other books. Like that's the beauty of Legends too. I must mention that you can get into most of the books or any material and you won't be lost. You won't be like super confused. You'll get into it and you'll understand what the heck's going on. Especially if you've watched all the movies, you'll understand this no problem. And this one goes into Boba Fett, and not only Boba Fett, but Bossk and the other bounty hunters, and has a lot of intrigue and deception and crime and whatnot. It keeps you into it the whole way through. So this comes a high recommendation, and I'm also going to be doing a review, going to be doing a non-spoiler review on my channel. So you'll probably see me if you want to see me rate this, you want to see my rating for the on my channel, check it out. But yeah, this comes as a high recommendation for me.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And as for me, well, I think it's, well, a great book, a great way to end the trilogy. The trilogy as a whole was a great read. I definitely enjoyed it. And yeah, this is definitely a good recommendation for EU fans, Boba Fett fans, or Bounty Hunter fans. Yeah, this is one definitely must read for those types of fans. Absolutely. Like, there's no reason to skip this if you're a Boba Fett or a Bounty Hunters fan. Definitely read this.
Yeah,
And yep. And with that, well, that's the end of the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy. And with this, well, we conclude the three-part podcast of the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy. And next, well, we will be dealing with the Book of Boba Fett, which is coming out in a few days, or it already came out at the time of when this video comes out. So yeah, that will be our next project after this podcast comes out. And yep, so with that, well, we'll see you guys on the next State of Star Wars podcast. Bye bye.
see you guys.